Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Test Reading Club. We will be taking few excerpts from the book Forest of Enchantments by Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni. The Forest of Enchantments is a retelling of the epic Ramayana, but from Sita's perspective. One can call it Sitayana, that brings forth the experience, feelings, and challenges of being a woman in a society dominated by man. This book is also a very human story of some of the other women in the epic. So let's begin.
Chapter 17. Time passed, the days fell on us like gentle rain. The nights wrapped us in gauzy arms embroidered with stars. Only a few months, and then we would be making our way back to Ayodhya. Ayodhya, after so many years in the forest, the city seemed unreal to me, a place out of an old tale. If someone had asked me what the place had looked like, or even my quarters, I would not have been able to answer. Thoughts of returning there filled me with turmoil, worries and elation jostling one another. All the people I had known there, how much they must have changed by now. And in their eyes, I had seen how much I had changed. I thought of Kaushalya, had grief azed her, longed to see Umila. She had been upset with me for having abandoned her for so long. I had had to work long and hard to cajole her out of her well-deserved anger. And what would happen when we finally came face to face with Kaikai? Ram, Ram may have forgiven her, but Lakshman had not. And of my own feelings, I wasn't sure. We both know that once Ram became king, he had grown distant from us. He had belonged first and foremost to these people. We accepted that that was how it had to be. There were no more attacks by Rakshasa. Ram and Lakshman must have killed them all, or perhaps news of their battle prowess had spread through the Rakshasa tribes, and no one else dared to face them. My dreams of Supraka had ceased too, so I didn't bother to tell Ram about them. The deer appeared soon after that. From the first, I sensed there was something unusual about the animal. For one, it was larger than any of the other deer I had seen, and its skin wasn't spotted but a clean, shining gold. Everything about it gleamed when I approached it again. It allowed me to reach a certain closeness, and then it moved away, stepping elegantly, quite unafraid. Its strangeness, of course, was part of its appeal, but the most unusual thing about the deer, though I wouldn't realize it until later, was that I couldn't stop thinking about it. I want you to catch this deer for me, I said to Ram. I have got to have it. Ram looked at me in surprise because it wasn't my habit to make demands. But I wasn't myself. That's what happens when we crave something so much. Then I whispered to Ram to take a look. Ram was watching the deer intently. He hadn't responded to me. Lakshman had come up to us by this time. He said, maybe it is a Rakshas in disguise, her- here to spy upon us. The best thing to do is scare it off. Shall I do that? He reached for this bow. I was suddenly furious. Was Lakshman and his continuous talk about Rakshasa? What right had he to spoil my innocent pleasure? God knows I had few enough in his wilderness. I turned to Ram. Sure, he had honor my request in such matters. He was always a most indulgent and loving husband. But today he said, better you forgot about this creature. Sita, whatever it is, I'll get you something else. Another deer, if you wish.
Chapter 18. Once Lakshman disappeared down the same forest path that Ram had taken. I sat down heavily on the threshold. covered my face with my hands, and wept in regret and despair. How beautifully the day had begun, and look where we were now. It was all my fault. Why had I wanted the deer so much? Thinking back, I couldn't understand it. It had been like a fever, the strange desire that had gripped me, as though I had been bewitched. And though I didn't regret forcing Lakshman to go to Ram's help, I cringed when I remembered the cruel tactics I had used, the hurt, and then the disgust in his eye that I could say such things. Just let Ram be safe, I cried over and over. Please, goddess, let him come back to me quickly. I promise I'll never ask him or you for anything again, and I will apologize profusely to Lakshman. I will. I will explain to him that I never meant any of those harsh words. I'll let him spend as much time with his brother as he wants, and I will stay out of their way. Often, when I prayed fervently for something, there was a sign, but today, nothing. Clearly, I had angered the goddess, and who could blame her when I had been so selfish and stupid? I was startled from my entreaties by a gentle voice. Good day, lady. The blessings of a sadhu upon you and your house. A man stood in the clearing just outside the boundary Lakshman had drawn out around me. Its fiery contours now faded into dusty ordinariness. He was dressed in the orange robes of a holy mendicant. He must have been on the road for a while, because his robes were tattered and his hair, falling about his face, was matted and unkempt. We had come across wandering sadhus like him as we traversed the forest, though recently, as we went deeper into Panchabati, we had seen less of them. I always enjoyed the description of their journeys and their words of wisdom. It was a special pleasure to see their hungry eyes light up as I offered them whatever simple meal I had prepared. I greeted the sadhu respectfully and asked him his name. You may call me the Shashan, he replied. It was a strange name, one I hadn't heard before. The sadhu must have seen my surprise because he gave a wide smile and said, Ten-headed. It refers to the many weaknesses that make me stumble on the spiritual path. There are no easy answers, Dasharath's voice said inside my head, especially when we want to please the one we love. That same love clouds our eyes and doesn't allow us to see what's right in front of us. There was no more time to debate the issue. The sadhu has stormed off towards the same thicket where seemingly a lifetime ago the golden tear had vanished. Stop, sage, I cried. I am coming. As soon as I stepped over Lakshman's rekha, I knew I had made a huge mistake. It wasn't only because of the pain that went through me, as though a thousand thorns had picked me at once. It was also the sage. The Rakshasa gave me a long, considering look. There was, I think, some admiration in it. Then his face hardened. Death would be too easy for you, and I'm not the kind of person, unlike your husband, who disfigures a woman and abandons her to a lifetime of sorrow and shame. This is what I'm going to do instead. I'll take you away to my kingdom and leave your husband to a lifetime of searching and mourning and regretting, knowing that he brought this fate upon him. Ravan, a jolt went through my brain. That same Asura king who had come to Mithila a lifetime ago, it seemed. His face was different now. When he failed at lifting the magic bow that was my bright prize, how furious he had been, how afraid my parents were that he would create mayhem. But because of his love for Shiva, he had controlled himself and left peacefully. I remembered a giant bird flying at the chariot, cursing Ravan in a human voice, declaring his name, Jatayu. He tried valiantly to rescue me, but he was old, and Ravan chopped off his wings without even a moment's hesitation. leaving him to spiral down to his death, spewing blood, while I stared in guilty horror because he had died in his efforts to save me. Elsewhere, on a mountain peak below, a group of hairy men, or were they monkeys, sat clustered, conferring. I threw them my jewelry to them, necklace, bangles, anklets. Give them to Ram, I cried. Tell him that Ravan of Lanka has stolen his Sita. Tell him that she will be waiting for him to come and rescue her. Chapter 19. While Ravan was escorted by his entourage towards a huge, glittering building that I guessed to be the royal court, Mandodari pulled me along to a chariot that was waiting for her. Her grasp on my wrist was rough, and she didn't speak. Her beautiful, chiseled face was cooled to show no emotion, but I could feel anger emanating from her, as well as shame. I could imagine how insulting it must be for her, she who was the daughter of a great king, I was sure, to have anything to do with Ravan's latest conquest. Beneath them, I sensed something else, a shimmer of fear. Why would Mandodari be afraid of me, a powerless captive? Goddess, I thought frantically, is this my destiny? From inside me, an answer rose, powerful as a volcanic eruption. Was it the goddess or my own inner strength? I couldn't distinguish them anymore. You are meant for greater things. Words poured through me then, mine and the goddesses together. Hear me, spirits of the island, the sea and the forest. O gods above, be my witness. I hereby curse Ravan and his entire lineage. When Ram comes for vengeance, as he surely will, his entire city will be filled with death and burning. The smoke will cover even the sun. The stench of bodies will spread beyond the boundaries of Lanka. Only vultures will be here to attend to the dead. Almost immediately, Ravan arrived. As you know, Sita, I captured you for the purpose of vengeance, but having watched you since the time I took you from your dwelling, I am filled with admiration for your fiery spirit. Ravan said, I could take you against your will, you know. I am no saint. I have done it with other women. But in your case, I do not want that. It's not your body I crave, but your heart. I'll give you a year to change your mind. At the end of that time, either you will be my queen or I will turn you over to Surpanakha, who will love the opportunity of designing for you whatever kind of death she thinks you deserve. I tossed and turned for a long time in spite of my exhaustion. When I finally fell into a troubled sleep, a dream came to me. In it, a god appeared, carrying a small golden bowl. I am Indra, he said. I bring you Sudha, the nectar of the gods. Drink. It will keep you from starving. Be strong and patient. Ram is coming, but it will take time. In captivity, days and nights blurred me. Some of this was my own disorientation, and some was Rakshasa magic, which kept me from seeing the sun for weeks on end. I figured Ravan had decided that the constant darkness would demoralize me and break me down sooner, so I decided to fight it with all I had. Had it been so long already, and still there was no sign of Ram, no word from him? My Rakshasi god
Chapter 21.
My Rakshas,
The visitor who came most often and troubled me most deeply was Ravan. Sometimes he came dressed in full royal regalia, displaying his 10 heads, each topped by a sparkling crown. On these occasions, he had been accompanied by courtiers and musicians, dancing girls and vessels bearing precious gifts, caskets spilling over with jewels of many colors. I had closed my eyes and turned my back on him. I had pressed my face against the shoka tree trunk, feeling it vibrate in helpless sympathy. I had put my fingers in my ears, but even that did no good. His Asura magic was such that his words traveled directly to my mind.
Chapter 22. I hadn't seen any monkeys in the Asoka garden until now. The monkey laid a cautionary finger on its lips, a surprisingly human gesture. I didn't trust it one bit. I drew it in my breath to let out a loud scream, unless it was a messenger from Ravan or a god who could disappear at will, or, terrifying thought, Ravan himself in disguise, which I well knew he was capable of. It was about to get into deep trouble. The monkey spoke, startling me. Ram, Ram, it said, patting its chest gently as though my beloved resided there. Blessed be his name, the rightful king of Ayodhya, and my beloved Lord. The blood thudded so loudly in my head, I had to hold onto the trunk of the Asoka tree to keep from falling. Was this the sign I begged for? But how was it that a monkey could speak like a human? In all my years in the forest, I hadn't come across any speaking monkeys. In any case, a tiny monkey couldn't possibly cross the raging ocean that surrounded Lanka. Hanuman said, by the time I met Lord Ram, he'd been on the road for a while, searching for you everywhere. He perked up a little bit when he showed him your jewelry. I guess you dropped it when Ravan was abducting you in that flying chariot of his. Smart thinking on your part, that was. It was my own stupidity, I confessed. For first for wanting that cursed golden deer, and then for sending Lakshman away with the harshest accusations, and then for being duped by Ravan. I am the one who's to blame for. Hanuman cut me off, a surprising sternness in his voice. Don't you blaming yourself for someone else's wicked trickery, mother? I tried to sleep, but due to excitement at having received news of my beloved, impatience at having Hanuman deliver my message, and anxiety that something might happen to the monkey before he had a chance to leave Lanka, rest was impossible. Chapter 23. Some days things didn't go well for Ram. On such days, Ravan came personally to see me and to enumerate my husband's losses. 20,000 monkeys killed. Who knows how many more wounded? Lakshman struck by a spear and carried off the field. Ram forced to call for a retreat. Day by day, though Ram was gaining ground, his monkeys seemed to grow stronger as time passed. Messes thrown at the chairs shattered, at their chest shattered, arrows deflected off their bodies as though they hit iron. Atrocities escalated on both sides. The Vanara army was being decimated, but even more Rakshas fell each day. All this death for my sake, what a waste it was. Every moment I regretted that I hadn't listened to Hanuman and allowed him to carry me away. Time faded in and out of focus as I sat under my Asoka tree, its grayness pierced only by bereft veils. I held on to Ram's ring and prayed for an end to all the suffering around me. Surely it would come soon. After Lakshman's near death, I heard Ram fought with great fury than ever before. The Rakshasas whispered frantically. At once, the mendicant metamorphosed into a giant monkey and leaped upon the temple roof. Within was an arrow colored like lightning. The monkey grabbed it with both arms, pulled it, for, pulled it free of the stones within which it was embedded, and shouting the name of Ram as though it was a battle cry, flew into the sky. Mandodari, Mandodari sent her guards after him immediately, but by then it was already too late. The monkey had disappeared. When I heard the story, my heart seemed to expand until I could hardly breathe. My Hanuman, I was delighted by his trickery and its success. He would make sure the dead arrow reached Ram. For this time, I believed that my rescue was possible, that it was close.
Chapter 24. Day, night. An acrid smoke covered the sky. Was the war over then? Were they burning the borders? Rakshasas and monkeys all together. Their differences erased by death. I waited in the Asoka grove, my body afire with impatience. For a long time, it seemed. Had they really, had they all forgotten me, finally exhausted? I lay down on the ground. It was the first time I had walked on the shore in Lanka. How beautiful the island must have been before the war. The pristine ocean and the glittering city, lying side by side like lovers. The waves kissing the shining fortress walls, the walls lending the water their elegant curvature. But today there was no shining. The blood-soaked sands were a dull red, the color of decay. The sea and sky were both grey, though it was afternoon. I forced it down and walked towards where Mandodari sat with Ravan's head in her lap. She bent over him, running a hand tenderly over his ruined, bleeding body. Having collected herself, Mandodari finally spoke. At least I have that consolation. And no, you didn't leave me childless. We have a daughter still. A daughter, Ravan rasped. So this was why she wanted me to come here. Yes, Mandodari said. Remember her, a beautiful baby, whom you sentenced to perdition for no fault of her own. I made sure she wasn't killed. I bribed the Ashura to whom you had appointed this task, as much with my tears as with the treasure I gave him. And so he left her far away in a small kingdom in the north, where the king found her and brought her up. I should have told you this is a long time ago, but I was afraid. I didn't know what you had to do to me in one of your terrible raids. Forgive me for that weakness. I didn't think it mattered because I was sure we had never see our girl again. Ravan's head jerked and he gasped in pain. Then he said with effort, You saw her? You did too, Mandodari said. She turned and looked at me and realized that she had known all along that I was standing there. Here, she said, is your daughter Sita. Ravan turned his head with great effort and stared at me. His eyes, once so terrifying, were glazed, barely open. Was that hope in them or horror? That isn't true, Mandodari, I said hotly. You are jumping to conclusions. Didn't King Janak find you wrapped in a gold cloth, unlike anything he had seen before? She challenged me. I sent, I sent spies to Mithila. They talked to people who remember what the cloth had looked like. It was definitely over here in Lanka. Ravan didn't seem to hear her. There was a smile on his face. How beautiful it is, he said. His voice weak but ecstatic. This much is true. I am connected to Sita through some mystery. From the beginning, I have felt that, and it has been part of the reason for my obsession. Ha, I didn't know. I didn't know. Forgive me, goddess, my dearest lady. for all that I have done to you in ignorance. I have no words for how deeply I regretted. His face was racked with grief, and I knew that he too had experienced the same vision. I am leaving now, but before I go, will you, in your compassion, place your foot on my head? As though in a trance, I moved forward and did as he asked, feeling the blood still warm and stick from his wounds on my soul. He held on to my foot with the last of his strength and gave a great sigh, his eyes closed. It was Hanuman who finally broke the silence. Mother, he said, bowing deeply, I have come to take you to Lord Ram. This is the end of your long sorrow. I didn't know that for me, a greater sorrow was about to begin. Chapter 25. I was in a fever of impatience to meet Ram, but Vibhishan, who liked to do things properly, said that first I had to be dressed the way the wife of a victor should be. I could have insisted on going as I was, but vanity overcame me. I wanted my beloved to see me at my best, not in smelly rags, with matted hat and a face streaked with tears and dirt. I told Vibhishan I would do what he requested. A deafening cheer rose up as soon as everyone saw the palanquin. I had to force myself not to flinch at his loudness. It had been a long time, 14 years, since I had been in such a large gathering, had heard my name being chanted like a mantra. Sitaram, Sitaram, Sitaram. The arc of my life was changing direction, swinging me back towards Ayodhya to don the heavy mantle of queenship. Ram was seated on the makeshift throne, a pile of stacked shields that must have belonged to the fallen Rakshasas. There were wounds on his body, and his face was thin, its shining dimmed. I was thankful, though only for a moment. I couldn't focus my attention on anyone other than my beloved Ram. I was surprised that he hadn't stood up, that he wasn't rushing forward to greet me. I was disappointed, but mostly I was confused. My husband stood up as I approached him. I bowed before him and touched his feet. I wanted to thank him, to tell him how proud I was him, but I was too overcome by emotion. But he didn't touch me, and when I, pushing all sinus aside, not caring what the crowd might think, reached for his hands, he took a step back and crossed his arms. Stunned my head away. I wondered if he was angry with me for having put him into all this trouble, for begging so foolishly for the golden deer and causing this war, this devastation. When I Ram spoke, there was no anger in his voice. There was no feeling at all. I was steady and impartial and uncaring, and so unlike my husband's, that I had not been standing right in front of him. I wouldn't have believed that it was him speaking. I have rescued you, Sita, said the voice. I have built a bridge over the ocean and crossed over it with my allies of the monkey nations, my followers, and I have suffered greatly in the process. For the Rakshasa army was a powerful one. Now we have slain Ravan and set you free. Here ends my duty to you and my responsibility. Go where you will to live out the rest of your days. I stared at him, uncomprehending. Had the yells of the crowd impaired my understanding? Surely Ram could not spoken the cruel words I thought I heard. What do you mean? I finally managed to say. It was my duty to rescue you, Ram repeated patiently, as though speaking to a child. But I can't take you back to Ayodhya with me. Ravan abducted you from my home. You have lived in his palace for a year now. Who knows what kind of relationship you have had with him? I interrupted him, my voice shaking with fury. Is that the trust you have in me and in my love for you? Is that what you think of my virtue? Well, then check with the inhabitants of the palace or ask Hanuman who saw me in the depth of my sorrow. I never set foot inside Ravan's palace. I never responded to him. No matter how much he threatened or cajoled me, I refused to eat or drink a grain of food or even a drop of water so that I wouldn't be beholden to him in any way. What you say may well be true. The man who was no longer my beloved Ram said in his iron voice, but your words are not proof enough, not for the citizens of Ayodhya. I can't take back to them a queen whose virtues they had questioned, whose purity they had disbelieved. It will throw the entire kingdom in turmoil, and I can't allow that to happen. I owed it to them. And what about what you owe me, your wife? I cried. Don't I have any rights? I owe you safety and comfort, Ram said, and his voice didn't shake even in the slightest. And and that I will provide. You may stay here in Ravan's palace. Division will care for you, your needs. In any of this palace, you can take another maid. I free you of all obligation to me. Ram's words spoken so calmly, piled around me like ice. They froze my blood, yet strangely, they gave me strength because what could happen to me that was worse than what Raman had just done by doubting my virtue in front of the entire populace, by rejecting me because of what his subjects might whisper, by shaming me by suggesting that I take another husband. It is not your in your power to free me, I said to Ram, and I too spoke calmly. The god bound us at our wedding with Agni Dev, the holy fire, as witness, and they know that I am pure and blameless. Yes, I wanted the golden deer, but that was a mistake, a folly, not a sin. Yes, Ravana has touched his body, this bundle of flesh and bones and blood. Using his magic trickery, he took on the appearance of the Sadhu and dragged me, against all my will and effort, into his chariot. I tried my best to stop him. I couldn't. Am I to be punished because he was physically stronger? Because he used Raksa will? If you reject me now, word will travel all across the Bharat Varsha, and men everywhere feel that they too can reject a wife who has been abducted or even be touched against their will. Countless innocent women, as innocent as I am, will be shunned and punished because of your act. Is that dharma? Is that what you want? Ram looked stonily ahead as though he hadn't heard me. Ravan stole me away forcibly. I continued, but even he didn't insult me as you have done here today. He respected me enough to not violate my body, and over my mind he never had control. But you You violated my heart, which I had given to you in love. Then, in the dark hopelessness of my heart, a thought flashed like fire. Abandoned as I was by my husband, no one could save me. But I could save myself. Love and happiness might not be in my control, but at least my dignity still remained mine. I might not be able to have the life I wanted, but I could choose the manner of my death. Thus, I made my decision. Brother-in-law, I must ask you to do one last thing for me. I said to Lakshman, build me a fire. There is nothing left for me on earth now that my husband, whom I love more than my own self, who has been in my heart and in my prayers every single day, since I was taken by Ravan, has shamed and rejected me so cruelly. For no fault of my own, in front of this entire assembly. Therefore, I have decided to end my life today. The flames leaped up avidly, taller than the treetops, taller than Ravan's palace. Heat blistered my skin, burnt away my eyebrows. While everyone started in horror or cried out to me to stop, everyone except my husband, I stepped into the blaze. After, the birds would sign off the miracle that occurred. Agni, the fire of God himself, appeared and declared my innocence, putting my hand into Ram's as though this was our second wedding. And Ram, who had fallen to the ground, crazed with grief, once I had disappeared into the flames, embraced me, whispering apologies and love, making my understanding. The virtue of the Queen of Ayodhya has to be above all suspicion. You see how important that is, don't you, my dearest? He said, his voice full of entreaty. And now you have proved it in a way that can never be questioned. And I nestled against his chest after our long separation, dazed yet triumphant as the gods rain celestial flowers upon us, and roar of jubilation rose from the crowd around us. Focus only on us, dear familiar heartbeat. Sitaram, Sitaram, Sitaram. By the time the god intervened, I was no longer just Sita of old, daughter of earth, strong and silent, patient and deep, forbearing and forgiving. I was something else too. The fire god himself acknowledged this change. Daughter, he called me. Yes, I was now Sita, daughter of fire. But I didn't know yet what this meant.
Congratulations, dear friends. It was indeed a lovely performance. And thank you so much to participants on behalf of entire team TES. We are going to finish the remaining novel in the next weekend. Have a nice day. I'm ending the meeting, guys.